Meeting to order. Are we taping, Kathy?
Yes, we are.
All right. I've got 5:36, slightly late, but that's all right. Can we have the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Kathy, could we have a roll?
Hicken,
Here.
Hayes. Here. Walther.
Here.
Quorum being present, in fact, every member of the utility committee being here. We'll continue with, we're on to number 3, which is the water modeling update. And I'll turn it over to either Mr. King or probably Mr. Cooey, but
A couple page summary I sent when you're just a summary because the report is in final draft stages. They're editing before they release all the information and some of their price estimates on some of these projects. So, long of the short, there's no surprises in this, or told somebody else like a silver bullet, like, aha, that's what we missed. Nothing new other than putting what we thought from experience and past modeling, kind of put it in data form to say this is what we have type of scenario. So the report will be a bound document that'll show different zones and ranges and how to simulate the program to kind of simulate an operational effect on the system to just give an idea what it will do to get to the point. What really kind of started this was to kind of kick back and review on a potential development, Hazelton, Carrington Ridge development. Basically, at this first glance, our first thought was, hey, there's a tank here. They looked at that and said, no, the tank will be silly, which is kind of what we thought. But really, the anticipated demand that come from that development doesn't seem to push this into a realm where we say don't do it. But this is equipped with the idea that there are some restrictions that we need to look at to kind of help the situation. Kind of make the flow passive water throughout the system a little better. One of them being a bottleneck at the Brightwater subdivision southeast tower. The transmission main from water plant 2 is 12-inch to the tower. As it leaves the tower, it's a 10-inch, then gets throttled down to a 6-inch, to 8-inch in the Brightwaters. I think removing that would be a solution. There are some folks interested in looking to develop that last final pocket in Brightwaters. And to that, the preliminary discussion was, as far as them getting the water main from there, be prepared. We're going to ask you to tap the water main, the 10-inch, off of the tower and kind of loop that into the subdivision so we can get rid of that silly 6-inch. I think that would be a focal area. And Creek Road and River Forest area. Same thing there. It comes up 10, 12-inch and then gets throttled down to 6 and 8 in the area. So part of this moving forward, like with the development there at Hazelwood, I think what we need to do is also look at, all right, here's some of the impact areas we need to look at as far as improving our system, getting a dollar sign behind it, and then figure out how we pay for it through tap fees. I think that'll be the best approach. Like, let's say Hazelwood comes in and we determine X amount of dollars for tap fees. We can figure out a scenario where they go ahead and pay us and we set that money aside directly to pay for this improvement in step with the development, or make it a part of their development project and maybe slap in some pipe for us at a different location. Who knows? Just some ideas to throw out there, but again, it doesn't seem that there's a whole lot of rolling of the eyes or concerns with putting in that out there. So hopefully in the next week we get the finished document with some price estimates and where we go from there. So far, the summary, I'll say at least at the booster station at the suction side, as far as improving that, it provides very little logical options to make that any better. Their report said unless you raise the towers that you have. Or put in a
I
big
think that's a
one.
great idea.
Yeah.
Just put some jacks underneath it, raise it up.
Is that how it works?
Yeah.
It's normal.
So, which is good. I mean, we have some factual information to at least move forward on, and then for any future developments, we're gonna, in my mind, go back to Strand or whoever and basically say, all right, now run this scenario. This changes every year, update that we have a new development here, and then.
Using this as the baseline?
Yep. So, again, nothing surprising. Puts it into writing and kind of solidifies some of the information. If you had a chance to read it, a lot of this is going to go to basically on their recommendations is get rid of the bottlenecks. And some of those, and most of those actually are on the SWINS list that I gave you there as far as any upsizing. We already know some of these areas. It's just a matter of doing them and when and how. And of course, my numbers are just cost project estimates, not solidified with the consultant. Any questions or thoughts?
I got a couple.
Do you have any idea how much linear footage you guys were thinking it was going to be to replace? And I'm trying to figure, where is it on your swim?
Let's look here. I'll tell you which project. For Township to River Forest is one of them. So basically, where the transmission main comes into River Forest, it goes to a 6-inch and then to an 8-inch transite pipe all the way up the township. That would be one of those spots that we would take a 12-inch. We've got 3,000 feet on that, and that's just drawing a line using GIS, just as a start point going here, and roughly 3,000 feet. Then the other one, no, that's tower to booster. That's a different. That one is really a pipe dream. I may not have the wastewater bottleneck on here. The one at Brightwaters, I'm not seeing it.
I'm looking for a Brightwater's name in there, but I don't see it.
I might not have that one on. Because originally, and I've always thought we would kind of do that project somewhat in-house. When the wastewater project was going on before they put the driveway in, we tried to get a change order in. I think it was like $40,000 to upsize that, and we didn't have the money. Way with that one, whether it be a developer or whatever.
Is that I'm sorry, Andy, I'll come back to your set follow-up questions if you have any, but is that development that you're talking about right there north of Shawnee Loop, or I'm sorry?
I think it's to connect north and south.
Exactly.
Thank
That's
you.
where it is. It's on the outskirts up there.
Okay.
Is there, so for a follow-up on that one, is there any way to leave those lines in place and bypass them with another line to do something
Yeah.
shorter and, a direct line that can leave those in place and let them work the way they're supposed to?
It would not be bad to have them in place. And,
Yep.
You got to loop. Sometimes I think about, like, if we think about River Forest, where that's at transite. That always worries me. But again, if you leave it alone, maybe. That makes me more nervous than 1940 cast iron. But yeah, there's scenarios. So part of this too is Patrick Strand, the guy we've been working with, Patrick. That's part of the follow-up with this project. We're going to sit down and look at all the options, and do some of the numbers, and if we need them to, kind of tweak a little bit. Well, instead of doing the whole 3,000 feet, maybe we do.
Can you also, just so that we're all clear on what the altitude valve is in the southeast tank, just to describe what that does and how that's installed?
Well, we already have an altitude valve in the southeast tank.
Okay.
So an altitude valve, best way that I can describe it, for lack of better terms, like It's almost like a check valve that can be set at a certain range to not let so much water in and let so much water out. What we found with that one at the southeast tank, it's all or nothing. So we either let nothing out or everything goes there and it overflows.
So the valve is bad.
Yeah, well, we've completely bypassed it.
Okay.
We've had the pros in to kind of look at it and tell us what we're doing wrong. The best scenario that we've come up with, and even with Headley Mills, we've talked about, instead of an altitude valve, I would like to have like some actual motor operated valves that we could hook to the SCADA system to actually physically open and modulate those based on system demand. I think that would provide us be a little more expensive than just dropping in an altitude valve, but during certain scenarios, we could open them wide up, close them down, turn the plants off, turn the plants. But yeah, it's a control. It's a control option for these, but Southeast, even when Headley Mills was online, we never dialed that thing in to where it was a sweet spot to where it's just enough in, just enough out to allow for proper exchange. Just no matter what. Currently, we're bypassing that one, and then with Headley Mills offline, it just good.
Southeast.
Yeah. So we'll keep chasing these down and look at some of these options and see with projects that we've identified how we can plug them in, or do we need to add some additional projects to our little stream to see where we go from here.
Nathan, realizing that I don't specifically see part of the genesis, or maybe not part of the genesis, but at least it was discussed in connection with it was Sugar Mill. On this report, is there a specific recommendation or discussion area as relates to that? I didn't see it, but maybe,
Sugar Mill?
yeah, maybe it's hidden behind words like Transite or Creek Road Connector or something like that I wasn't.
It would be related to the Hazelton and Carrington Ridge developments, because that's that item number 2 on that was specifically driven. Hey, we've got some concerns down at this area. That's what they were really setting out to look for, to see what negative impact the development there at Hazelton doesn't seem to be.
No, I mean, that's kind of surprising.
Well, and sometimes
I mean, they're pretty far apart, right?
Well, yeah, and sometimes I think with our system, and this is where I try and have 2 water plants. Neither one of them are running at full capacity. What's the dynamic changer? Does this system work better when we're closer to a design capacity? You know what I mean? So maybe some of these issues or concerns out in the wash, so to speak, when we're actually producing more demand in the system. I also think, now this hasn't been determined yet, but under that scenario, both water towers work in conjunction with each other. Operating per design. So, but yeah, so with the final draft study too, they'll have the scenarios too where they'll have, hey, here's us putting in cluster homes or condos in this area, simulating the demand here, a new demand, and showing what the rest of the system looks like. So far what they've done, it indicates no change, no negative change in the residual pressure, which is good, which also leads me to believe that we also have some more growth capacity within our system. But when these come up, next time another 200 home development, new development comes up, we're going to say, hey, plug this in and tell us, make sure we're okay.
I have a secondary one. Can you explain to me really quick, under the model calibration, when they're doing that stuff, the field residual pressure, model residual pressure, field measured fire flow? I think I know what they are, but I just want to. Do you see the table just?
Mm-hmm. I think it's just the difference between what the field and the model says. So difference of 1 or a swing of -1. actually done and what the model predicts in these areas. So, well, yeah, you can see right there. So number nine, field residual pressure 35, model pressure 37. So there's a difference of 2.
Right,
So
okay.
The field is indicating it's lower, the model is indicating a little higher. So these factors come into play as they kind of populate the data on all the node reference points on our map. So they're going to come up with like almost like a, not so much a weighted average, but a comparison, you know, to make sure that it's as realistic as possible, I guess.
Which is especially important for future
Yes.
load design or whatever you want to call it.
And some of these predictive scenarios saying, hey, what happens if you have a water main break right in front of the booster station? And what does the system do? So with what we experienced with that, what they have now, we can easily predict, or at least better predict, how the system's going to react based on some life results versus doing the physical test and going out and trying to check every reference point. But so far, you know, between us, I'm very happy with the attention that Strain has given us and some of their follow-up and some of their diligence. At this point, I have no complaints, and I can't wait to see report. So, and I think that'll provide us a better picture, and hopefully we can hook it up to our screen here and show you some nice pictures of the future video.
Other questions? All right. I don't have any. That moves us on to tap fees.
So the other document that I gave
Dovetail.
you, so tap fees. I have, and this is kind of jumbled, it's not really perfectly organized, but in the middle of the page, you'll see what our current rates are. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
At the heading? So that's our current water and sewer rates. So directly above it is where I took and kind of calculated out what our water capacity fee should be based on maximum gallon per minute use. Just not necessarily all that scientific, nobody's gonna write a thesis report on it, but it was just me trying to say, all right, what is the actual value of a 3/4 service line in our system during a demand standpoint? What is that compared to a 6-inch based on demand type of thing? So that was just trying to create a scenario on finding numbers that mirrored what we have now. Does that make sense? Like, however we got to the point with our current rates, I don't know how
Right.
or who got to that point, frankly. But this was me trying to say, all right, this is what they gave us and said, this is something we can use. How can I put it into something realistic? And that was my attempt at that. So, you know, the water, there's an increase in water and sewer. And part of that, when you do a calculation like that, we have more available capacity in our water system than we do our sewer system. So every gallon of available capacity counts more in a weighted average in the sewer than it does in the water, right? So that's why you might see higher sewer numbers, at least for capacity fees, that I would not complain or cry at. I'm just saying that's how we got to this point. So then what I did is based on the bottom part, the recommended rates considering unfunded projects versus capacity. So I took basically some information from AWWA on how they developed some of their recommended capacity fees based on capacity and project needs, if you will. So basically the bottom part, the recommended rates, is where I took what is our available capacity divided amongst the data in the SWIMs, where I have, you know, we got 5.8 million in sewer capital projects, identified 8.6 in water, and kind of use that to come up with a ratio to come to a number based on pipe size, and that's where I arrived on that, at least on the bottom part. So then that indicates a water 3/4 residential tap of 8,036 and a sewer of 9,529, which would put you in a whole nother league compared to everyone else. I was just trying to run the numbers to see what it would look like. In a perfect world, this is also using the idea that we're gaining at least 60 customers a year to afford projects, and then eventually by the year 2026 or 2028, we should have all the projects done on this list. Reality, so as far as tap fees go, I think if we're looking at, I'm sorry, I need to quit calling them that. I will also say too, real quick, on the recommended rates where I got the really high numbers, this would be under the scenario two, based on some of my reading with the AWWA. If you're gonna roll out this cost, we, the city, do all the tapping and all the extension, at least into the edge of the right-of-way for any future stuff. So right now, what we do at our current rate, Ryan Holmes wants to build a house. Ryan Holmes pays what I would like to call the capacity fee or impact fee, but then they also have to hire their own plumber to tap the main and run the service line. Under this scenario of the really high-priced one, based on the numbers and some of the studies that they provided in that book, the scenario would be the city would front the cost of extending the main or extending the service line to the said end user, and I think that would change.
Does the city have that ability?
Right now, no.
No.
Oh, heavens no.
No.
And so any efforts to go that route would only be a higher expense on our part. You would have to hire, you'd have to hire what I would call a certified workforce, or just, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I was wondering.
No, I'm throwing it out there. So you get to that point, you're like a Delco, to where basically anything on the public side, no one else touches but us, type of thing. We don't do that now. So it's something to consider. So if we're looking at the impact fees or water capacity fees to meet all our capital improvement project needs, I don't think you can develop a number right now under our growth projection to meet that need. Unless you go to, what's 8,000 plus 9,000, you're looking at, what, 17?
About 17.5.
$17,000 for a residential tap? Yeah, in 20 years, we could get a lot of this work done.
Yeah.
But are they gonna come then?
Oh, who I was going to come and pay 17 for?
Right.
Now, if you put a gate around the entire community, then maybe, yes, we have a gated, no, I'm playing. But I almost lost track of where I was going with these capacity fees and the trails that I went down. I can't remember really what I started out to accomplish, to be honest with you. Other than looking at it and reviewing. And if we want to raise it some. I will say, in the interest of development, in my mind, if that's something you're concerned about, I say leave the numbers where they're at. Because even if you follow my one option above that, you're only increasing it by, at least the water, a couple $100. What's the big deal? At least on the residential end. Now sewer, I wouldn't complain at that, but we're not in the
We're not in the red on the sewer side.
right.
If these were flipped, I'd be like, I would have been more like,
But
okay,
I can't make the numbers work that way, and I was trying. No matter how I did it, even
yeah,
if I put
numbers are funny that way. I
well,
guess.
if I put in a multiplier, I could come up with something, but I couldn't justify, what am I gonna use that for? Like, if it was a type C factor or something, then yes, but I couldn't get to that point, no matter what, if we're using, capacity versus, capital improvement projects. The water pot, I guess, has more needs and holds a bigger capacity than sewer does right now. So, I don't know. I will, and this is just my opinion in looking at everything where we're at, I still don't think raising the water capacity fee a couple $100 is really gonna be worth effort or worth the time to do and what we're gonna do. If you wanna raise it by a couple thousand, yeah, but even if you do the math, let's say we raise it 2,000 and we get 50 homes this year, 2,000 times 50 is what?
10 grand.
Well, okay, so you guys saw what we paid for a well pump. That gets us a well pump. It doesn't do anything on the CIP list, so I don't know. I don't know that I have the answer or solution other than,
It's not a game changer for our CIP stuff.
yeah. And I don't think we can make the affordability in such a way to do that. And that would also include a concerted effort on raising your per 1,000-gallon rates too. And I guess it would be a hard sell for me even right now to say, all right, we want everybody to pay, well, even doing that number, you can only increase it by so much. And what are you going to do with the additional 50 grand, let's say, a year that we can look ourselves in the mirror and raise the rates on, right?
Yeah. I
It's
get, you know,
almost like a waiting game, I think, in some aspects, to sit and wait and see how things develop, where the city goes in the next couple of years, and at some point, I hope to the Lord above that we can secure some of these grants that eventually are coming someday for these infrastructure that's more than 50 years old, that it were bought and paid for by some people that are, hereafter,
I guess my concern is whether it's a game changer or not. If you know development is going to happen, having those new people foot a little bit more of the cost of that development, as opposed to having people that are already here
Yeah.
foot the cost of that. You know,
Well,
I have a question. Right, the money, this is me learning, but the money that you would gain from increasing the tap fee, does it have to be spent in 1 year, or can it be held?
no, it can be held.
So that you could eventually knock off some of the things over time because you're accruing pad in the bank.
Yeah.
So when you have those things come up that you won't be freaking out because you don't have anything.
That's
I guess I'm with Tim that we see it coming. So, and I don't know as much as you do. I'm just that's just my little window into what you're doing is you can see that it's like that storm coming down. The dust is coming. I don't mean that in a bad way. But if we see it coming, it's inevitable. How do we prepare? If it was a storm, we would go out and get flashlights, whatever. How do we prepare for all that's going to be new, but would it pad the bank for what we need to fix that's old?
No, and I don't know, without talking to developers to get their perspective, but let's say from this hydraulic study, and let's say the projects are identified, and of course are already, identified in some of our capital projects, we get a number behind it. Is it more palatable to a developer and you come in and, for example, let's say that Hazelton Crossing place, based on the buildings, based on everything there, at our current rate structure, you're looking at $1 million in water and sewer tap fees. So from a development standpoint, are you more apt to do that? Or if we've identified a $500,000 project to say, hey, how about this? Is that the type of scenario to where I also think, well, what's the point of being the middleman? If we could get something done and it provides a benefit to us and to the developer versus paying,
I think there's areas of the city where you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, but there's a lot of areas of the city. Well, some of them that I'm thinking of, I guess, are on Southwest Licking Sewer and Water. So we are a little bit more limited to villagey,
Yep.
old village type concepts.
Yep. And that's part of the game too, where we have, and I wouldn't call them a competitor, but they're a local entity that's doing the same thing we are to areas within the municipal boundaries that are growing at a different rate than maybe within our service territories. So, I don't know, it's all interesting. It's almost like a Sudoku puzzle that we're trying to figure out, and what number goes where and how can we tweak it to work out in our favor. And I don't know that I can tell you the answer right now, other than here's the info, we're working on it, and through some consultant advice and work, maybe there's some scenarios out there that we haven't really,
Tackled yet,
yeah.
Andy?
Hey Nate, when, on your back page here where you put, the proposed rates at 50 new residential customers
Yeah,
per year, what exactly do you mean by that?
I think that's me, let's see, 50 new residential.
That's on average.
I would say, I don't know.
Okay.
I'd think
Well,
about
but that, yeah.
It's not your recommended, I can't get the math to work. So it's not the recommended rates, and it's not the current rates. Is it potentially what
That might
you would
be-
see as far as on their average usage? Is that what they're gonna pay for
Yeah.
water over a year?
Yeah, because what had started this too was trying to figure out something for Fannin and Deagle. So some of this, that might have bled over into this.
Okay, I couldn't figure out where you were going with it.
Yeah, let me look here and maybe see if I can just,
So current rates, 50 new, water would be 236, 250.
If, for the tap fee, for the
Tap fee,
capacity fee.
yeah.
That's why I couldn't get the math to work
Yes.
for that, and
For
I
the
can't
tap
get
fee.
it to work for
Like that fee.
current or recommended. It's gotta be the water rate.
I think it's the revenue of said 50 on top of,
Without taking away the cost for the gallons that, or for the
Yeah.
processing
yeah.
that they would incur. So essentially, you're saying that the budget would have somewhere around $430,000 added to it for 50 new customers, minus the costs for that, for those people, which we've already determined is, there's not a profit per se.
For those two combined, you're saying
yet.
water and sewer, yeah.
Not yet, no, I don't think there's
I'll
ever
have to
gonna.
look in my other notes and see, I'm just playing. See, let me look at my notes and verify for sure what the heck I was thinking on that.
The other,
I'm just saying, if that's $430,000, remember though, that's not strictly utility. That's water, sewer. We can't
right,
share,
oh yeah.
unfortunately.
No, I was thinking for his list.
Yeah.
What that might knock out. Yeah, anyhow, the other question I had, from what I recall, Nate, from your previous, information, we had looked at other rates in the area, and we had evaluated that pretty heavily, with sanitary looking like it still could be raised compared to the others in the area, but the water, if this is my recollection, the water was pretty much in that higher third
Yeah.
of the rates, which I'm comfortable with, that's fine. Sanitary, why wouldn't you, if you saw that $4,095 for a 3/4 inch, if you found that was low in the lower third of the rates that are out there, why wouldn't you raise that?
I guess part of me, there's a degree of me that, I guess on the sewer side of things, we're always looking to fine tune and find cheaper ways to handle our business type of thing. I guess a significant enough increase to the water side of things, I don't know if it's palatable to do both at the same time. I guess that would be my only.
Well,
If you said we could do it, I wouldn't say no, by no means would we say no, but would it be appropriate at that time? Because then I'd be afraid if somebody would look at the numbers and say, why are you worried about raising the sewer? Seems like you're pretty healthy in the sewer.
Right.
Well, but maybe if we have to start feeding phosphorus chemicals in the next 2 years, I'm already guessing if we go that route, we're looking at a $50,000 line item in the budget just for chemicals. That's really kind of got me scratching my head, and we're trying to find a way to not.
Well, it goes back to Suzanne's, if we see the storm coming, yeah, we can react in 2 years, but is that too late?
Oh, yeah, well, I think that's where the.
Or do you need a reason to do it in 2 years?
Well, which do you think would go over better?
I think that, my personal opinion is, you do it now while the economy's, in my opinion, right now, development's healthy, the economy's exceptional, all those things, that's when you do it, compared to who knows what 2 to 3 years down the line is.
Okay.
Especially if you see that there is a reason in 2 years to have an adjustment to the rates, you may not be looking at sewer taps in 2 or 3 years.
It's true.
So, That's
What
what
I would
guess
like,
I would look at
you know,
it.
what I would like to do is go ahead and prepare some legislation for council for consideration. It's going to take 3 readings to do. It's an ordinance change to potentially raise the sewer then from what we're hearing and leave the water where it is.
Well, and I don't know if that's where everybody landed or not. I wanted to just bring up the sewer side of it, just because we know that there is some, that is coming down the path. But the water, I'm not sure exactly how you deal with the water. You know the water's short, you know it's gonna be short.
Yeah. Well, and as we're talking, I wonder if maybe, I got one more idea I could try. If we simulate the system, so let's say that, you know, our combined plant capacity, maybe I'm going about this the wrong way, is 2.1 or 2.2 MGD a day. With our infrastructure in the ground, you know we can't push that. So maybe I take my calculation back and at least talk with Strand, like, hey, what is our max yield that we could push through this system in a day? You know, you see what I'm saying? At least.
So you're gonna change your denominator, so you get a higher
Yeah.
So
gallons
take that
per.
and divide, yeah.
Yeah, that's all you're trying to do, but I would say that if you're gonna have development at full capacity, you're gonna add your rest of your infrastructure so you can handle the 2.2.
Never mind.
Yeah, I don't know you can do that.
Yeah, no.
That's cheating.
I was trying to think. Yeah, well, I was trying
I mean, it's today's look rather
go.
than what you're trying to accomplish is what's it at full build out.
And I think part of this too, and I haven't got to the point, looking at a map and looking at our service territories and knowing that there's places like we won't cross without legal paddles, right? Where is our growth pockets? And instead of me guessing, what is the potential? What are we gonna look at a fully built out Pataskala water system? Maybe we should start at that point and scale back and say, hey, at max, you're only gonna see this many houses.
You may only see 1.9 million.
Yeah. And
Then
at least
then it's
have a
justified.
Yeah, then have a workable number there saying, this is at best. This is with multifamily or what, you know, whatever scenario. But looking at the pockets within our service area where it could feasibly happen that's not in the floodplain or something, you know what I mean?
I've always been first of all, when it comes to sewer tap fees, I don't necessarily disagree with anything that's been said. I've always tended to look at it immediate and trying to solve the immediate problems, which is more on the water than the sewer side. When you add the tap fees together and compare them to other cities,
No.
we're no longer in the top third. Our water is high because our sewer is low.
Right.
And I would have looked to come up to the middle by adding to the water. Obviously, this doesn't. I'm interested. What's the multiplier change between the different numbers? I don't have the brain that does that automatically.
I don't remember. It was an Excel sheet and it was doing all the work for
Okay.
me. So I'd be lying to you if I
Well, and then I have a question that I guess is kind of for everybody here, or you, or BJ when he comes back in, and that's, since the numbers we're working on right now are totally and entirely arbitrary, as far as I can tell, and when we sat down and looked at everybody else's numbers, they're also arbitrary. There's nobody else that we talked to said, no problem, here's the formula. Everybody else said, we said, Pickerington, why are your sewer rates so high? They're like, well, because we built a new plant.
Right. Yeah. And even AWWA, what they're providing, it's a nice standard if you're starting out. And ground zero building up, that book is basically saying, hey, you're starting out as a district and you're building it up, and here's the first 10 years, second 10 years, third, you know. Here we are midstream trying to figure out what is the number? How do you get to that point? And how do you place a value on it? So the scenario two then is equipment age. So water plant one, for an example, there should be a age factor related to the system too, to say, you're now past 30 years. So what's the equation there to kind of,
Meaning it should be higher. You have greater chance of stuff going bad, greater chance of replacing X, Y, and Z.
and then I flip it over and say, well, you got water plant two that's fairly new. Maybe you just design everything around that being your ultimate capacity. But then it doesn't.
Well,
Tim, I don't, for discussion, I don't know that it matters to me one way or the other. I mean, if water's the issue in your book, then I think you could take the two, add them together, and say, should we be at the 50 percentile? Okay, I'm okay with that. As long as we're not, skewed, because everybody's getting both. I mean, they're not getting one without the other. I mean, the new developments at least are. So,
I think we're gonna have less and less scenarios with us where it's just one. You know what I
Less
mean?
and less.
right. Well, and
Beechwood's pretty much built out, there's only so many pockets where it's just one.
Can be combined.
Well, I'm wondering, and I asked about the multiplier, because I'm wondering if we look at this and we say, all right, 4869 compared to 4725 is not significant.
Right.
What's significant that still doesn't make us the most expensive system to hook into a water and a sewer? And then
I see.
use that as the base at the 0.75 and use the same multiplier going up the line.
weren't we talking about making the sanitary like 8,000 for the 3/4? Weren't we almost doubling the sewer, if I remember correctly?
Under one of them you could.
I thought that's
one
what-
where I did the projects versus capacity, yeah.
Yeah, I think when we were comparing those, when we did that put the sewer in the top third, basically made them both about the top third.
Yeah.
If you add them together. So what you're saying, Tim, is if you made water, just say for discussion purposes, $8,000 and kept your sewer at $4,000 or $4,100, then you're 12.1, which is probably.
It's very competitive.
That's right with Southwest
Very
Licking.
competitive,
That's,
yeah.
I mean, Southwest Licking is 13 something in it, 13.9. Yeah. So you're not completely, although I hear a lot of people complain about Southwest Licking. But, if you wanted to be in the top third, but not, any higher than that, 67th percentile, then you could probably shoot for that and add to the water if that's what you felt was the right side to add to, the correct side to add to.
And I think, I guess, throwing out there, what is the driver behind this too? We're trying to come up with a scenario where we can find funds without impacting current customers to try and afford some of these projects. So it's almost determining what's a number that we feel comfortable going to developers or builders and saying, we want you to pay this to be a part of our party. I think that really comes down to it. If we're uncomfortable at a certain range, let's say 15,000, if we all go, whoa, well, then we know. So we could always build in a formula to get us to where we could justify it, where anyone comes in and say, well, I don't want the 3/4, I want a 4-inch. Well, here's the formula, so everybody's being treated the same. We're just not going through and going, oh, that works, let's go with 400,000 there. Or, I mean, there's a recent nonprofit that went through this scenario too, to where the impact, where are you going to drive the impact from, I guess? Again, you have an existing customer, and then you show up, if we follow the rules, you owe us $300,000. How's that work?
Right.
So, I don't know. I don't know that there's an easy answer. I don't know that there's a short answer, but, the two bald guys in the room, we can kind of figure something out.
Well, I think, to Tim's point, the water is what we're truly concerned about. And I think and I can't remember the numbers, we presented something at the last one of these meetings that looked at raising the water and put us about 12,000 or whatever. And, that's where the need is. And what I don't want to have happen is, we're hearing from developers every day and miss out on an opportunity to capitalize on some of this money that could help the system.
That is how I think where I think I'm at, and it's not raising rates on people that are already here. That may come. I mean, that may be inevitable. We don't know, but I don't know. Given our funds, and the structure of our funds, I don't even know how we can ask citizens
See, I'm
to
with you there.
to.
I agree.
100%.
I agree.
100%, because
I agree.
you're in a scenario to where I think, no, I don't think. We were dealt a hand with this outstanding debt that was trying to be paid off by growth that wasn't happening. So that's where we came up with the CIP. CIP, we've asked the residents, we've asked the customers, help us pay down this debt. And on top of it, pay your share for what you use, just like any other commodity. from that standpoint, I think we're responsible and it's working. I think to do something more on top of that right now, I don't know. You know, you need a game changer. And by that, I need, you need some type of, and I hate to say it, a manufacturer, certain type of developer on our system that has that positive net impact on our operations that we currently don't. But that's we're a bedroom community on that standpoint. I know people don't like that, but
No, I agree.
that's what we have. So to then turn to those folks and say, we need you to do, I don't know that we can.
So,
And other than ride out the storm and part of this too, and wait until 2027 when some of these notes come off, and as we're still, our debt is going down, but we're still collecting it the same. Eventually, you're going to be able to stash up a little bit of cash, right, to go towards these projects. But maybe it's 10, 15 years before we actually can do that without changing our rate structure. And I don't know.
rate structure meaning per gallon rate?
Usage rates. So I think we have to be fair and balanced, and I don't think, as much as I would like to, let's use the recent water main break as an example. We cannot fix everything and update everything to avoid what happened there. It was plastic pipe. It was at the worst spot possible and at the worst time possible because it was a weekend and usage period was up. So we can't say that we're going to invest $8 million in the system and this will never happen again. So even by going that way, we jack your rates up, we jack the capacity fees up, we try and fix everything. No guarantee it's a better product than what we have. That's the risk. That's the concern. And I don't know. I think part of it again is maybe somebody wiser than me to say, well, what do we do? Do we just weather the storm? Because again, I don't think we can. We'll cripple people, I think, if we charge what we want to, so we don't have to fund or finance any more debt. I think we got to figure out what our magic cutoff is. 2021, 2024. Say, all right, now we got to take on another new $4 million in debt and spend 15 years paying that off, like we're doing now. I don't know. I don't know. It's fun, though, right? I mean, it's a blast trying to figure this out.
Well, it seems like we, and I don't, we kind of we're chasing our tail.
Oh, yeah.
It seems to me and I understand why. It's not like I think anybody is, but I guess my suggestion would be that we, since it doesn't seem to be based on anything provable, that we would bump the tap fee for water to the point where we're still competitive with surrounding communities and we'd keep the sewer the same.
I agree.
So I'll make my next assignment. I'll get that list out again when we did, I think it was February when the survey went out, what everybody else is doing. Let me compare that again and kind of find that sweet spot and see where we're coming.
Is that all right with the committee members, or do you?
Yep.
I hate to keep kicking it.
Ooh, let's kick it.
Would you guys want to see that again at a utilities committee before
I'd say the
going to
next
council?
I'd say the next utilities committee meeting, because what I'd kind of like to see, and I guess to make it a little clearer, Nathan, is I'd like you to give the three of us, here's what everybody charges. Here's where we're going to be if we bump the water, and let's just look at bumping the water. Here's what's going to be if we want to be at the top. This is what we'll ask for the water. And if in your mind the sewer fund is also something that we may have to bump in the future, maybe you go, I'd like to be at the same rate. For now, I'm happy raising the water and not the sewer, but I might want to make the sewer 5. And to do that, this is what I'd make the water at, and we would still be somewhere in the middle, and then maybe have the three of us look at it and say, this is where we think it falls best, and make that recommendation, and then craft that legislation for council.
Perfect.
We can do that. Okay.
Number 5, well pump discussion.
Okay, well, pump discussion.
So in the meeting, in the last city council meeting, we were talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, BJ, there was a request to us about an increase in, go ahead.
There is a request to increase the funding for the well pump replacement from 9,500 to 14,000. So it's an additional $4,500, and that was on the agenda to increase that expenditure to that amount.
And so I kind of felt like we were beginning to look at BJ and ask him questions, and
Why?
yeah.
I figured it'd be the case since I was gone.
So I
I
kind
can't
of
fill your shoes, Nate. I'll tell you that much.
taking advantage of the fact that we have a meeting. I mean, obviously that water is under the bridge, if you want to pardon my pun.
Yeah, especially in the floodplain.
But I thought maybe you could give us a really quick description of what that was, because there was also some discussion about. I had sent a text to BJ that's to put this on the agenda that said, "Does this happen to us very often, where a company says it'll be 11, and then when you get halfway into it, they go, oh no, it'll be 17, or oh no, it'll be 16," and then is there something that we should undertake as a council to be wary of that and not let people do that to us, if that's the right word?
If I can address that real quick, no, it doesn't happen
Okay.
often. I can't remember the last time we came back to ask for additional funding for a project. I just can't, so it does not happen often.
Well, the last report, the last study we did, we came back for more because they figured out that we needed to
Yeah.
run new scenarios. But I can see that. I can see that. Was it
Right.
the same? So I guess what we were waiting, and BJ, you, as I said when we were talking in council, I didn't expect for you to know exactly why it went
That's
up.
why we're addressing it
So,
now.
so Nate, what happened?
So what happened? Of course,
They
the
explainable.
well goes out,
Your long story.
and we work with Mount Drilling. They've been usually when I call on a contractor, it's one they usually respond in an emergency. Like I know when I call them, they'll be there, and two, their prices are competitive. So under this scenario, the well at well number 2 at plant number 2 went out. So of course in that scenario, we put an electric meter on it going, yeah, this thing's fried, we gotta get it pulled. Complexity of that changes, of course, because the well heads are about 12 feet high to be above the flood levels down there. So we bring them out, and then usually what we do with every piece of equipment we have, we got a document on the shelf that supports what the piece of equipment is, whether it is blower, pump, or motor. So we pull off the water plant 2. We got an O&M manual, flip through there, and we find the Gould's pump. It wasn't Gould's, it was a different brand. Here's the pump that we have in here, because, when they do submittals, they'll check off and highlight and basically say, this is your model. So we give that to Todd, to Mount, and say, this is what we need, give us a price, so on and so forth. So when this happened, I went ahead and started an emergency PO thinking, holy smokes, we might have to do the motor and the pump. So the initial paperwork that we gave to them, which is what they ran with to cross-reference to get a new pump and motor. Lo and behold, we drop it in, and it's half of the gallon per minute it should be. Then we went, well, that's odd. So then we pulled out the old pump and had them cross numbers on the old pump, which probably hindsight, since it was the first time we did it, we should have done that. The paperwork that we had and the pump that was in the ground were not the same. So the 9,800 PO, which actually was going to be 95, they gave us a little wiggle room, would have covered that 360 gallon per minute pump, motor, and labor. Found out that it wasn't the right size. What we're paying for is the increase to a pump that has 100 feet of total dynamic head and actually
A larger pump.
720 gallon per minute range like we should be. So the increase was, and I told him, at least going through this, since it wasn't, it's not like I can blame it on him and say, well, this was your fault. I kind of felt at fault because we gave him bad paperwork that we didn't know until then. So that's really what drove that, is we went in, we had an existing PO going, we found out that we actually had the wrong pump and motor new, and then that was the increase. Now the actual increase, it brings us into like the 12.2 range. If it makes you feel any better, we're under the budget. So usually when I get into scenarios like this, when it's especially the first round with that pump, next time we'll know, I'll estimate high just to make sure I get covered, with these guys in case they get into something, or like one of their guys, when they were putting it on, fell off and broke his neck. You know, so that you know, the whole scenario changes, and they were overnighting the pump and getting it here because they knew we needed it. It was just a cluster.
Did they take the old one back?
The old one, we have the nameplate.
I'm sorry,
the
the new
replacement.
old one.
Oh yeah. They reshelved that, no cost to us. That was good because we dropped it and said this is not right, and we didn't even run it. We tagged it off and we got with Todd and said, check that other pump. Where's the other pump? Because he had it. He took it back to his shop and said cross reference and went, we have the wrong pump. So that's what that was. So usually, if there's a situation like that, very rarely it's the contractor. Usually it's something on our end where we either A, didn't have enough information to give, or, well, like that scenario, what we thought we had was not what the paperwork supported. So,
Other questions?
Nate, when you're dealing with a well drilling company, my question at council was basically, why didn't we just go ahead directly to the supplier or the manufacturer and buy the pump? Why did we go through them? Because obviously there's markups and such. I understand, you know, installation costs, but for them to supply and install, is there potentially, and I know this is hindsight, maybe for, knock on wood, the next one that will happen in 20 years, is there a reason not to already have a supplier, at least know who are, it sounds like this was on the newer station, and it was a newer pump that for whatever reason went down. And would we not be ahead to know the supplier and have prices, you know, have them at least have a manufacturer's rep that we know that we can contact directly rather than relying on whether it's Mount or whether it's, what's the other one out there on 161 Blau?
the only other one I do, HD and Moody.
Yeah, either one on those.
Yeah.
They pay, they're obviously charging a markup, and it'd be preferable just to know if we can get them directly from the manufacturer.
Yeah, I didn't think about that at all. Because I'll be honest, sometimes when I get into that situation, part of me is like, we're paying somebody else to do the footwork for us. I won't lie. I mean, so part of me, I'm like, if they mark us up, I'm okay with that. But as far as, like when and you're right, like our lift station pumps, I go to a manufacturer's rep and buy that.
Right.
I think the difference is on those is because we throw those in and usually install them ourselves. The well pump's a little different. But tell you what, both the wells at Plant 2, and this is what Ryan and I were talking about today with the alternating cycles, the run times between the two are not that far
Probably
off.
pretty equal, and you're looking at another one.
We're going to find out if this was an anomaly or we got another wear and tear issue coming. And at that point, we could, because now we know, well, it's a Gould's pump that we ended up putting in there. I know where to get those. And
Gotcha.
yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I'll on the next one, you know, and it's usually with our other pumps, our transfer pumps, our high service pumps. I got a guy for that. I just have a well guy that I go to buy well pumps from yet, but I'll see if we can get some options there. So
Okay.
And I think that was the same explanation that I gave at council, so.
Was it?
Yeah, I think so.
I believe
Almost
it.
verbatim.
I believe it.
Yeah.
All right, next item I've got on here is zoning changes, impact on city water and sewer. And I think I put it on here. I don't know if the other utility committee members have either been contacted or talked to anybody about zoning changes that might affect areas of the city that are low pressure. But I have gotten a letter or probably more than one, from Sugar Mill, and it has to do with putting in for instance, making a zoning change where the giant list of zoning allowances is, and if I get off on the wrong word, jump in, but include something like a car wash. Well, while I don't know that I believe that a car wash,
They would have a booster pump for sure out there.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, please proceed.
Good one, Nate.
But do you and BJ ever think about those zoning changes and impact on those water issues? Because I know that's coming to a vote for us as to whether or not we want to allow a zoning change. And when I looked at the new things that are allowed by the zoning change, one of them is a car wash.
If I can, real quick, just to lead you in, can you talk about the process of when we get zoning requests, applications, that you get them and what you do with them?
Yes. So what's the most common zoning request that we get?
Business to or residential to
Residential.
business.
It's usually a residential variance, right? So there's already a code. They can't follow the code, so they're asking to go around whatever the requirement is. I don't mean it that way. So, for example, anytime zoning gets a request now, whether it's our service area or not, they've got a really nice system to make sure, like, the district, sewer and water district gets informed, and so do I. So we get a comment period. So I'm going to use an example for one today. Anytime that we get a variance request, I think these people, are much like the Hayeses down in Main Street area where they got 2 front yards or 2 backyards, however they said that. They want to put in a pool.
A shed.
So I think the house faces front, the garage is out back, I think. They want to put a pool in the middle. So, of course, what I'll do is I'll pull up GIS on our maps and say, well, there's no main lines in there. I have no concern on infrastructure. But what we'll do on this one, for example, is say, hey, we see no issue as it relates to the public lines, but be aware your service lines go out back. Maybe we ought to locate those before you place your pool in case it becomes an issue.
No, that's perfect. I think that's
So-
good customer service.
So let's say again, like if we go somewhere, what we've started with the Brightwaters, they're sniffing around there. So they'll come in and meet with the zoning folks and say, hey, we're thinking about it. What should we know about now? So they do like this pre-brief. Well, right off the bat, I said, hey, if they're thinking about doing this, we want them to run a water line instead of tapping Shawnee Loop South. We're going to make them come back another, well, I think it was like 700 feet or 600 feet and tap off of the line back by the tower. Make them aware of it. So I think we're catching these things. So if
You're
for
talking
example-
about with an 8 instead of a 6?
Yeah, well, I'm saying they're probably a 10 or 12.
Okay.
As big as we can.
I get you.
The bigger we go anymore, the better off, I think. But anyhow, so let's say we get another cluster growth, well, like with Hazelton. Moving forward, we've got this, I think we've got the water model dialed in pretty good. We get another request for another 100 homes or something. Our first step in meeting with them saying, hey, we want to loop here, we want to loop there. Then we're going to take that concept and give it to somebody like Strand and say, hey, run it for us, tell us what the system looks like. Is there something we need to be aware of before we move forward with it? So I think, well, there's a reality at play. We know the numbers, we know the limitations of our system. In order to improve that to a certain expectation level, I think is unattainable in the near future. So moving forward, knowing that, I think as we get these developments coming in, we're just going to have to take our time and look at it and make sure it doesn't cause bigger issues. So rest assured, and whether, say I move on a year from now or somebody else, I think the flow that we've got with zoning, administration, utilities, I think it's going to be around for a long time, so I don't think it's going to get glossed over. So let's say there is a car wash going right next to
Sugar mill.
the first thing we're going to do is say, all right, what type of pressures are you going to need to make this work? Are you aware that our static pressure is this? And then kind of simulate, what, just like you would for a fire situation, like out back here for the PD. One of the things we did, even though it was ours, make you aware that this pressure here at this building is worse than down there, so everybody's aware. If you're thinking of a 2-story building, you may need a pressure pump for certain pressure upstairs, So that's what we're doing. I think we'll cover it, and I think too with the notification process of the zoning, I'm not worried tremendously about it because again, the trend that I've seen since I've been here, I guess, knock me over if we get 70 homes a year. I really still see this trend of 45 to 50.
Mm-hmm.
Now, would we like more? Yes, but I don't think it's enough to kick us to a direction that says, oh my gosh, now things are really bad and we can blame it on 2 subdivisions right now. I don't think we'll let it get to that point.
If the car wash went in there
Yeah,
and said, we're not worried about pressure.
yeah.
We're just gonna pull off whatever we need. People, this isn't jet wash, this is easy wash.
Yeah,
We're
the
just
old
gonna-
style.
Yeah, we're just gonna pull off whatever we need off of there. Would that not affect the homes behind it?
Because the way our system is set up, and this is what the water modeling has again proven to me, like when we did some of the hydrant testing up there, where we have our set points on the towers, that says, hey, we want you to run or we want the plant not to run. It's all dependent upon demand. So if you put in a house next door and they're doing 200 gallons per minute of demand, we're going to see that and the plant's going to compensate for it. So me personally, under that scenario, knowing that, we would say, hey, they got a 200 gallon per minute demand Monday through Friday, 8 to midnight. Run this for us. And like they did with this, if you see in the report, they said, hey, instead of running your high service pump at 45 hertz, jack it up to 55. And that's some of the ranges that we have to play with in a demand scenario like that. So personally, I get the perception, but I will also say, our perception is often reality, and we can't often be convinced that our perception is not reality. But there has been a person in that subdivision that has kept up with everything that we've talked about, took it upon themselves to spend the money to put in a backflow device and a pressure pump, and at last check, they have a constant 75 pressure in their home. And again, goes back to even if everybody did it, we're still going to be able to provide you that water. We'll meet that demand. We can only push it so, the pressure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it doesn't bother me. What bothers me is the perception and public relation nightmares that often come with this stuff. We want to be accommodating. We want to please. We're here to serve you, but also knowing if this is a pie, a greater part of our pie to fix some of these issues, well, it's $8 million. You can't afford it. You, the customer, you don't want to afford that. So we're trying to do best with what we have.
Other questions or any comments?
That's a good question.
Thank you, Nathan. The final thing I have on here is just a weird idea. It's a fire hydrant at Foundation.
Yeah.
This was born for me out of the 4th of July.
Yeah.
We ran, a service organization ran a hose a rather long distance. I remember our discussions about putting the monitors on hydrants for the street fair.
Oh, yeah, and that's coming up too.
So I wasn't sure first of all, if it was even possible. And, I don't remember there being a hydrant. I was told today that there was one up by the baseball fields.
There is. There's one hydrant. I know you can't see it from here, but I'll pass it around.
I'll believe you.
It looks, because actually, so what we had on our GIS and then Chris going out to kind of rectify where the drawing shows the hydrant, it's in a different spot, so we're of course fixing that. But anyhow, so it should be close to, I don't know if it's the softball or the baseball field, in the concession ball field range around the road as it kind of turns through there, or the drive, whatever we call it there. So there is one there. There is, it looks to be 6-inch PVC water line that kind of cuts through the field. So I would say if you're interested in more water out there, I guess 2 questions. Who's going to pay for it and where do you want it?
Well, I guess that part of that is, for me, the question I wanted to ask is if you're like, yeah, it cost you $4,000 to put one in there. And I was kind of be like, well, okay, that might seem like a
You're
legit,
thinking like a 2-inch hydrant? Is that what you're thinking?
Fire, I don't.
they're just regular old fire. Well, so part
You
of
don't
me,
want pumper down. You don't want a 4-inch.
no,
You want a 2-inch. That's the end of a cul-de-sac type, private cul-de-sac hydrant, or at a private house. So they're $1,200.
Well, there's also, I think it comes down to where do you want it, because I think where you mentioned is where the line stops. So it's
Yeah, it's even
extending
better.
from there.
Yeah,
That's
it goes-
even better to put it there, so you have control over the line and can flush it when you want it.
Then it goes on from, here, look at this.
If there is one, Tim, can we access it during these activities.
Well, I
We
don't think,
run off of those.
I don't think we can because of, it's even further distance than where the service organizations were. And that, I don't necessarily,
About walking, are you talking about softball? Is that where the service guys, is that where you're talking about they were? I wasn't here for the fireworks.
they ran the water line from the maintenance shed
Over.
around the back stone parking lot, all the way up to where the tractor pull is.
Okay.
And I would think anybody would have to do that.
So the 6-inch main stops here. See this corp stop valve? That's the service line that goes back to the soccer concession. Okay, so they run a long service line back there. This is where they tee off 6-inch, and there's the hydrant there. It's not over here. It's actually
Yeah, I thought
here.
there was a hydrant right
There
there.
is. So without modifying,
Softball.
without
Right.
extending a main line, you could tap off and put a 2-inch or something.
But that's not the right spot for it.
Yeah.
That's
And,
not
and,
what-
and I- in my brain, I was also thinking, okay, if, I don't think we're fighting wildfires there, but
Oh,
there,
yeah.
You could
there's,
be.
there is a, I mean, there's a,
I've seen some of that food.
legitimately, there's a place here and there's another place over here. And if this place over here were to catch fire, I mean, they're gonna drop a line here.
Run.
And,
Where's the
and-
main come from for the soccer garage? This is the softball.
yes.
Yeah.
So where's the main come for the
Right
soccer?
here, it's just a long service line that they run back there. It's not a main. They ran a service line. I think it's 1 inch. I can't remember what's in the building. They just ran, well, it's like, I forget how many thousand feet it is.
Yeah, it's a three-quarter meter in there.
So that's, see, the corp stop is right there. So I'm guessing they either had this teed off or they 90'd or came off with the service line off of that. So without, if there's somewhere else you want to go, you got to figure out the footage. And again, I would say, this is me, if you want to have something for that, you might as well extend the 6-inch.
Yeah, exactly. What's here? This is six?
That's the hydrant. That's where
That's
the
a
hydrant
6-inch?
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
right
yeah, you go right down the road here and extend that down here and put,
Yeah, but who's paying
and then
for
put
it?
a new tap, then intercept that other tap and move it closer, so you don't, no wonder the water is so terrible there. I mean, it is,
Well, yeah, I wouldn't say it's the best in the
No.
city, no.
no, it's,
But
So-
the answer would be either some conglomeration or between utilities, Parks and Rec. I don't know when Parks and Rec looks at that, we have to ask Mr. Ramsey and say, hey, is this something that's someplace on your radar? Or would you be interested in this? And this is how much it costs.
does Macintosh have water?
Macintosh. Oh, no.
They don't have water on there?
That was my first thought.
No. Well, and then, also, I don't know what the regulations and rules are, but, after this, water main break, this sounds primitive, but something I've always thought about was for emergency purposes, having a water wagon.
Buffalo?
So like Ryan, so when the Oaks were one of the people that was out, the nursing home, he went and bought $50 worth of bottled water and took it in there just to kind of help him out, So let's say that you 6-inch hydrant or, regular fire hydrant, you're looking at $2,000. I don't know how many feet you're talking, but let's say we're already at $3,000. Are you better off buying a poly tank for 2,000 gallons maybe and putting it on a trailer that we could fill up with fresh potable water that they could hook on? Of course, it'd be gravity, but then we'd also have something for
You could
emergencies.
put a little pump on that.
Yeah, you could.
You can put a little pump on it.
For
I've done it
emergency
before.
scenarios, we have a wagon that we could take downtown.
For emergency,
if the
yeah.
downtown's out, and at least.
I've done it
Let
before.
people fill up.
When I
it sounds
dewatered
primitive,
wells, putting
Do we have
sanitaries
anything
in,
like
I
that
do.
with our fire department?
No,
but They got the swimming pool thing,
I don't think, yeah.
but even if you got like a
Interesting
plastic
joint
poly
thing.
tank and treated it, I don't know if the health department well, they use holding tanks for these food wagons anyhow. We would just have a communal. Do one of those 2,000 gallon ones that maybe stand like 12 feet high or something. I don't know. So I think that's what.
And it's portable too,
Oh, yeah.
so can be
If-
very
if you're
versatile in
talking-
town.
Yeah, and if you're talking a bad enough scenario where we're out of water for several days, people aren't gonna care about flushing their toilet, they're not gonna care about running the laundry, people are gonna need something to drink.
That
After
serves
being at
multiple
camp for a week,
purposes.
it doesn't matter how cold or warm it is, you're thirsty enough, you'll drink anything, for the most part. We don't get to that point, but.
But it could be used for something like Foundation Park
It could,
activities,
yeah.
where you need to put out something in an emergency.
And in that scenario, I could see the utility department supporting the purchase. We could say it's dual purpose.
How much silly busy work would it be to give me an idea of?
Price on which, a tank?
Yeah.
I could do that, and if you tell me how many feet you'd want to run a line to, where you'd want it, like, we could give you.
Oh,
an
yeah,
estimate.
yeah, ultimately, I think the really real place that event that I see it happening right now is the fireworks. And I think locations at the fireworks are in flux anyway. So I don't know that it could be justified. I was almost thinking about it because I wanted to ask, because if you were like, well, they just decided never to put a hydrant in. There's a 2-inch line that goes right here. It'll cost you $1,200 to put a hydrant on top of it. Then I was going to be like, okay, I think we can solve that issue.
Yeah.
If it's something different, I don't know if it's necessarily, although I like I mean, being the emergency planner in me always says, you know, if we have that scenario, to have potable water would be awesome. The other side of me says, you got to keep it someplace. You got to keep it decontaminated. You got to make sure when you're done with it, you dump it out, and it's
Well, you keep it inside. The UV rays will ruin it.
so in the end, I don't know, but if you're like, I can find that out with 5 minutes of work, maybe we can pursue it.
Well, you want to know what a tank costs?
More or less, yeah. What it would,
Well, 2,000-gallon poly tank, you're probably about $1,100, $1,500.
Then you're probably talking
That's
a four-wheel cart, steel cart, which is going to be another $1,500. So you're $3,000.
Is there a hitch on something like that?
Yeah, you hitch it. Yeah, you have a
Hitch it
tongue
to
and
a
hitch.
go truck?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've built them before. I mean, we've had to do them in construction before to have them for wells when we dewater wells. I'd say you're talking 3.
Either way.
Yep.
okay.
And the nice thing for your
Under 10
purpose,
minutes.
for your purpose, you can have it for supplementing
Yeah.
a line somewhere.
Yeah.
It's really easy to just tap it right into the line and put a little booster pump, put a little 2-inch pump on it. It'll pump that pressure right up. Only problem is when it's 10 degrees out, it sucks.
That would be the,
It does, and you have breaks when it's 10 degrees out too.
that's,
If you light a fire underneath it, though,
It serves
it
stew.
serves, I mean, like, look at that.
oh, keep
Okay.
them warm and give them water.
Thank you. I'd throw it open to other business.
I just want to say there was lots of good feedback about the timeliness of the water main break. People were very, I don't know, I see a lot of people in town that they post their comments about how quickly it was done. So, appreciate that.
I did too.
I like the signs. That was a good start on appreciated that driving down. I mean, it didn't affect me. My mother-in-law called to ask if it affected her on International Drive, and she was like, oh, I just saw the sign. I mean, so she knew it didn't. But we're getting better at that.
We're getting
That's a work in progress.
Well, Nate and I talked about this today. I think I mentioned it to Tim. You know, if it's a neighborhood, we've got it knocked out of the park. This was thousands of homes spread across miles that were
Now
affected.
what? Right. Can we use the flashing signs?
We could have. It's a Sunday trying to get a hold of people, but what we're going to do is implement an auto call system where people can sign up for. So if something,
District has one.
right.
Yep.
So, you know, if you sign up for it, you get it. It's only as good as those signing up
Will
for
we
it.
put that in like our newsletter that goes
It will
out?
certainly be. There'll be a link advertised. People can go in, log in, put their information on there for it. Something else I was just going to say too.
We could do
about-
a Facebook link.
There will be.
Yeah.
It'll be a link to Facebook, which will take you to our website to sign up for it. We're going to split it amongst departments. So that's, you know, between Facebook, website, signs,
Utility notes. Do we have
I'll
like
call.
the bills that go out?
Oh, yeah, we'll be able to
We
do
could
that.
add
It'll
it
be
to
on
the
there.
bill.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, and that's what we were talking, you know, last week. I told them they had experienced everything really, but a water tower collapsing.
And last week was wild.
We had a massive
Yeah,
flood.
had a sanitary
Storms.
sewer
Flood,
Fires,
phones out, storms.
But that's
Water
so
leak.
in the storm, it killed our credit card machine. So we were talking too. If you had that call system, be like, hey, we could save people a trip because they would come
Starting
in
to be
and
used.
credit cards down. Well, that's what they wanted to pay with. You know, could have put out a note saying, hey, for the next couple of days, if you're planning to pay your utility bill. So You know, and as far as like the boil alert situation too, and we were trying to do the math today, so roughly the people that we thought that should be under we're gonna start calling it a drinking water advisory, would have been about 1,500 people. And even had we had 20 to 30 volunteers, we would have spent 6 to 7 hours
Sure.
getting door hangers out. Door hangers are old and fallible because even if somebody's not home, we don't carry a roll of Scotch tape with us. You put it in the door, open it up. So part of this is a follow-up. I think everybody did great, as well as can be expected. I think sometimes, again, some people's expectations, for example, we all know that dogs are capable of licking places. If that said dog can lick said places and then drinks water that might be under precaution, I think your dog's going to be okay. But how do you communicate that? So what I'm going to do this week is kind of come up with just like, hey, an update as a fallout. This is why we do this, and again, this is how we're going to handle in the future. And here are the places you need to look if there is a concern, or what do you need to spot for if it happens to you. Now, part of this, I'm going to take some of the blame because I've always, when it comes to boil alerts, I've always gone the full distance. Because I've always tried to be transparent, and I don't want people to say, I got chunks in my water, what the heck happened? So we've always told people, there's a boil alert. Okay, so if you follow American Water Works Association, AWWA standard, if those boys, they go out to the dig job the other day, and if they swabbed any of the new fittings with chlorine, added a little bit extra chlorine, flushed it at the local point, and still had normal residual, we don't have to notify anybody of anything. I've always done it out of habit because I don't want Mrs. Johnson seeing cloudy water and going, what the heck happened, and then in our mind. So with this, if we follow the AWWA and OWEA standard, we only need to notify people if the tests come back bad. Now, what type of cluster do you think we deal with then? We didn't tell you before,
Yeah.
now it comes back bad, then why'd you not tell me in the beginning?
Hopefully you didn't drink in the last 6 hours.
Right. So it's darned if you do, darned if you
Right.
don't. It's like, wait. So we're going to try and boil this down at least, hey, hopefully have a nice, simple, this is how we're going to handle it. We're going to use Facebook. Eventually we'll have this notification set. But until then, this is what you can expect. We'll do our best. But on a Sunday,
No, I had.
But
it was
not
challenging.
only where to look, but what you can do with the water. Because
Yes.
I fielded many questions about: can I shower? Can I wash the dishes? Can I put
I
it in
make
the
coffee,
swimming
is that
pool?
good enough?
Can I make coffee? Can I, I bathe my kid? Is he going to be okay? Yes, everything's so kind of what you can and can't do with this water without being harmed, I guess. So.
Well, and a lot
And
of
it comes down
times-
to ingesting it. And 99% of the time you ingest it, you're going to be fine.
Oh, I wouldn't use that as
99
a
is a high percentage.
100% of the time we're fine.
100%. Okay.
Boil alert.
Okay.
Really a boil alert like this is in effect, let's say it happened on the day of the storms. And we're dealing with a water main break, and then we got sewer overflows in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And no electricity to send your robocall.
There you go. There's the scenario where you're like, there's the potential. That hole there was a nice, clean, dry hole.
Right.
It goes really, you know what I mean? So that's where I've always said, we've always treated them as if it's the highest priority. And maybe we've taken for granted what people may or may not understand what that means. So I think we need to change the lingo. Because does everybody in here have a refrigerator with a filter on it for drinking water?
I do.
You read those filters, the one that I read at my mom's house the other day, they claim to remove 5 trace pharmaceuticals. Well, if it can remove trace pharmaceuticals, it's going to remove any potential bacteria. So I think we can say, hey, filter your water, Brita filter, certain type of filters, or buy bottled water if you're that concerned. Because most people say, well, I don't even drink the water anyhow. Well, then why are you calling complaining that we didn't tell you fast enough with the boil alert? That's where I struggle a little bit.
I did not hear many complaints about,
I didn't hear a lot of complaints.
for what it's worth.
I had a couple.
Did you,
I had
Kelly?
a couple phone calls,
Had a couple phone
emails.
calls. And,
I saw a lot of questions.
yes.
But
And
let
as soon as it was explained, though,
Yeah, the late.
it was good. Can I do this? Can I not do this?
And sometimes that's just the nature of the person. They have to ask it, just so they know they're okay.
Right.
I feed it to my kids and just see what happens.
Yeah. You know.
They grow a horn, that's their day. And battle better. I thought it was, I mean, it really, it's all about growth and how we're gonna grow with the times. And we don't have a tiny little town anymore. We're neighbors. And we don't even have, this is sad, but we don't have people that are like, hey, knocking on doors and letting our neighbors know like we used to, borrowing eggs and sugar. We just stay closed in.
I
And
heard
so,
from several people say, I didn't see a sign because I didn't leave my house on a Sunday.
right. And so even if you put the flashing signs on Broad
Or
Street.
the door hanger.
But
they
it had
may
a
not
blimp.
see 'em.
I don't use my front door. I use
Right.
my side door.
Right.
And so even the door hanger was there.
So we will take every step we can to notify as many people as we can.
That's good enough
That's
for me.
always been the trick for us. You just kind of guess, like, what door, and then some people don't want you on their porch either. I mean, sometimes when we've done this, so part of this, we're going to say, hey,
I'm well aware.
if it's greater than 100 people, we're going to make every attempt. We kind of
Right.
decided today, if it's 100 or less, we can manage door to door if we have to. But like what they did for Sunday, they went to the actual affected people, like the Oaks, the people right in front of there that had no water, face to face. Then started to go to Kroger's and all those guys just saying, hey, just in case, be prepared.
Right.
They went to One Healthy Place. They went to DeVito's. That to me is what that's even going above and beyond, because I will say, even though we are growing, you're not going to get that from Delco. You're not going to get it from the city of Columbus or even the city of Delaware. And I hate to say it, if you call one of those and say, well, I didn't get the notice, well, you should have checked, online or whatever. Well, I don't have internet. Well, yeah, so I think we do a really good job. It's just this one, it was about the worst and last location I ever thought on plastic pipe. It enrages me when plastic pipe breaks. And this wasn't like a crack. This was a pressure fracture the whole length of the pipe. And, I blame it on the storm. No, I'm kidding.
No, you did earlier, so you're not kidding.
I did, but
When I was out there, Nate, there was a contractor out there helping you guys.
Yeah.
How do we handle that type of, is there an emergency budget we have for that kind of stuff?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So we set it up, with Ventures, and again, they're a company, and we've tried to work with two others. Who's going to call come when we call on a Sunday, and they were one of the guys. So we we have our normal, what I'll call our dig job fund, and then I've got an emergency fund. And then I always hope at the end of the year I don't have to go through the emergency fund. Well, this is the first time this year we've had one after hours. So
Do you set up rates ahead of time with them?
yep.
Okay. So everything's
And
set and gone?
We negotiate that based on, our availability to help too.
Mm-hmm.
So if we say you come to do the job and we want you to handle everything, so that's why you usually see at least one of our guys with them for labor and parts and helping, because it gives us a discounted rate.
Right.
So,
Okay.
That's good. Any other business?
Well, last thing, obviously, there's still, now that it's drying out, who's taking care of restoring?
yes. So we used to have Ventura do it.
Okay.
And what we did, we started to do some in-house just because they were so busy or had other. We've done some in-house. What I'm doing now, I'm experimenting with a landscaper, because I've had a couple scenarios where people are never satisfied. So what we like to do, you can't compact dirt. So sometimes you got to let it set. And then you let it settle, nature take its course, then we'll come off, and then we'll usually till it up and take some of the loose off, and then topsoil, seed, and straw. Well, it doesn't matter if we had Ventura doing it or us, so I wanted to experiment with what would a landscaper charge me, and it will make the people feel better to see a landscaper truck out in front of their yard. I mean, honestly, if the prices are competitive, prices are good, we're paying for it no matter what. So we're starting to, the company, they're out of Hebron. We were going to give them like 4 jobs just to see how they do. But in the meantime, usually our guys will kind of go out with the tiller and do some of the. But yeah, we'll give that. So what we do, we got a checklist anytime we have a dig job. We usually won't do anything at the site until at least a month or so many rains have passed. And if we don't get rain, Chris will go out and hose it down with a fire hose. You might see him doing that, just to make sure we get good compaction. So we don't have to come back and do it twice. So they keep a checklist, so whether it's yard or asphalt or driveway, and then kind of the same set. It's a little easier if we're doing a stone base, you know, you can kind of do that a little quicker if the asphalt guys aren't so busy, so.
Okay.
But yeah,
Just the weeds will be there soon.
Oh, yeah.
And they'll
Oh, yeah.
overtake that, being where it's at.
yeah,
I'm just
Unsightly.
anticipating your complaints, that's
Oh,
all.
yeah. Yeah, it'd be the prime spot, wouldn't it?
Yeah, almost put a sign up there that we'll be back.
Yeah. Oh, there, we could do that. Get a sign, we'll be back.
Nature's taking its course.
All right, that's all I have.
Thank you.
Good.
Looking at the clock, we're past my typical time for a productive meeting anyway, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. It's moved and seconded. Can I have a call?
Hicken,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Walther.
Here? Yes.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, BJ. Thank you, Kathy.
Time to go.
Hayes.
Yes.
You guys.